Hi, my name is Tina Mazahari. I'm Vice Chair of the Doylestown Historical Society, and it's my honor to interview Judge Clyde Waite this afternoon. Judge Waite is the first African-American lawyer to serve as a judge on the Bucks County Court of Common Pleas and served with distinction from 2004 to 2022. But that is not what defines Judge Waite, and I've asked him if he would share his story with us today. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood, please?
Well, I grew up in a small Rust Belt town in western Pennsylvania. McKeesport is the name. It's a few miles outside of Pittsburgh. And it was kind of a tough time that I came along through McKeesport. Born there in 1944. My father died when I was 4 years old. He was a person who came up from the South near Charleston in South Carolina. He, along with his two brothers and others, moved north to find employment. So he worked in one of the steel mills. He was fortunate to get that job because jobs are very hard to come by. But he died when I was 4 years old. There were three younger in my family. Total number in the family were 9. So my mother was left to raise 9 children from 4 years old down to a newborn, and those 5 others who were older than me. And she had to take care of all of us, all by herself, which she did the best she could. She never learned to read or write, and really had very little in the way of skills. But she was tenacious, and she fought hard. And so it was a tough time. We were forced out of the home that we were living in at the time of my father's death, and we found kind of a ramshackle house to house the 10 of us now. And it's a 2-bedroom house. It had what sort of indoor plumbing, but almost not. I mean, there was a bathroom. Hard times can bring the best in you out, or it can cause you to give up. None of us were the type to give up. We would fight to the extent that we could. And so the toughest part was living in a part of town that was right on the periphery of the white community, but not fully into the black community. So I grew up as a loner. I didn't identify with the black community necessarily. I didn't identify with the white community, obviously. But the tough thing was not belonging to either side. And so it was really an isolating time, and I pretty much kept to myself. Pretty much let the bad times build a sense of anger, a sense of deprivation, a sense of poverty that I have never shaken off to this day. So I spent most of my time in the library. I would be in the library at a time when no one else was there, and I would just read books and kind of put myself in the place of others, but all the while knowing that that wasn't me. So the poverty was there. And so when I finally got through my elementary years, where I set apart from everyone else in classrooms, I can recall times back in 2nd and 3rd grade where during that time we were still selling U.S. savings bonds the kids would buy stamps and you'd put them in a book, and when you had enough stamps and your book was full, you would get a savings bond. Also, every week or every month, you would have to buy your milk, so you had to come in with your milk money. And I remember being in the classroom on stamp day and milk money day, where everyone had to line up around the room to march up to the teacher and buy their stamps, and they would give the money that their parents had given to them to bring that day. And when you're in a room, in a classroom, where the landscape is irregular because you have different tall people, short people, but when everyone is up and out of their seats and standing in line to pay for their milk and stamps, and there's one person sitting at his desk with everyone else around. Now it's like being on a tabletop with a pumpkin head, and you're it. And you feel like you're in a museum, in a diorama of some sort, where people are looking at an exhibit, and that's how I felt. And that would be every month. And I just, the anger and the how dehumanizing it was. I will never shake that off to this day. And I'm now 79 years old. And I remember every one of those days sitting there feeling like that. And the anger got to the point where I would never smile, and the teacher would try to get me to smile, be happy, and I would just kind of stare. Somehow or other, if you're strong enough, all of the tough things that happen to you can make you resilient to the point where you can pretty much put up with anything. So finally, I graduated from high school. I'm in the commercial course. My guidance counselor decided that I needed a vocation, that I obviously would not have an opportunity to go to college.
Why not?
Money. We didn't have toilet paper. We didn't have clothing. My mother was working as a domestic for a girl that was a classmate of mine. But I used to get her, the daughter who was my classmate, the daughter of the family that my mother was the domestic for, they would give my mother their discarded clothes. So I ended up getting the clothes of my female classmate, and I had to wear these things to school. It was like the old jeans. You really couldn't tell that they were girls, except that she was not quite twice my size, but she was quite large. And the clothes would just hang on me. I would have a belt on and a big loop, and the clothes were, and the pants, and then the shirts were sort of male-looking blouses. But she told my classmates that I was wearing her clothes. Now, I don't think that she was being cruel. I think it was perhaps thoughtlessness on her part. And that also added to the problems that I was having at the time. And interestingly enough, this woman became the executive co-producer of the Mr. Rogers show that was running in Pittsburgh. So right out of high school, that's what she started doing. I ran into her here in Doylestown when I was running for judge in, I believe it was 1994 or 5, something like that. She was in Doylestown, giving talks to pediatricians at the Doylestown Hospital. And she saw one of my yard signs when I was running for judge. So she sees Clyde Waite. She tracks me down. She gets a hold of me, and we had dinner at the Doylestown Inn. You're talking about the good old days back in McKeesport. And so I kind of went along. Yeah, it was really, really fun times back there in McKeesport, where you don't have enough to eat, you don't have clothes to wear, but fun times. So she said, well, we'll have a glass of Chardonnay with dinner. And, well, let's have another glass of Chardonnay. And I think by the third glass of Chardonnay, the veneer came off. And I said to her, let me tell you something. I didn't have any fun back there in McKeesport. And I really, frankly, didn't like you. And not only did I not like you, I couldn't stand that grandfather of yours who used to sit on the porch, because I would do yard work for the same family that my mother was the domestic for. And her grandfather would sit on the porch and just stare at me as I was mowing the lawn, going back and forth with this hand mower. Never would say a word to me. And I said, I really didn't like that grandfather of yours. He never spoke to me, never said hello, not a word. He just stared at me. And she said, well, let me tell you something about my grandfather. And it kind of catches in my throat just to even talk about it, because I hated this guy. And it turned out that this guy the family was from an Eastern European country. And my classmate's father, when the Nazis were invading all of these countries, her father got the whole family out, but he couldn't get his father out. His father was placed in one of the concentration camps. They subjected him to medical experimentation, one of which was they cut his tongue out. The man never spoke a word. Her father found his father at one of the camps when the liberation took place. His father found his father. So her grandfather was brought back to this country by the father that took the rest of the family out, and when he got back, he found his father in one of the concentration camps, and they had conducted experimentation on this poor guy. And the reason he wasn't talking to me is because he couldn't talk at all, and he was so traumatized by everything that he went through. He was sitting on, they would put him on the porch, and he would just sit there, and I would be mowing the lawn, and I took it personal that he's communicating to me that I wasn't good enough and for what he went through. And I told this story to a couple of people, and I told them that anger that had driven me for years and years and decades. So I said to her after she told me that, and I burst out crying right there at the table at the Doylestown Inn. I said, the anger that I had to confront is gone. I cannot live a life that would drive you by anger. But it did help. That anger, I never would have been able to escape where I was. By that time, by the way, when I finally got into Howard, I was no longer interested in the girls' dorm. I was seeing things during the interim from that 1962 to the point that I got admitted at Howard. All kinds of things were happening in Washington. I was right there on Capitol Hill. The Supreme Court was catty corner on the right side. The Capitol building was across the street, connected by a tunnel where people would go back and forth. Demonstrators all over the place. The Martin Luther King marches, the other marches. I mean, it was like coming out of a dark cave and going into a place where just everything, the world came together right there on Capitol Hill. The Kennedy assassination takes place. I think that was 63. All kinds of things were just going on everywhere. So when I finally got into Howard, I was a serious person at that point. That's when I met up with Stokely Carmichael, who was the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I also met Rap Brown, the head of the Black Panthers. They were recruiting students at Howard to go to Selma to do voter registration work. Now, this would have been in probably 66, after the Voting Rights Act was passed. And so I went to Selma, Alabama, and Selma was the more, not exactly cosmopolitan area, but Lowndes County, which is adjacent. It's a different county from Selma, but Selma was the focus. Lowndes County had like an 80% black population, 85% maybe. Single digits for the number of minorities who were registered to vote, who were permitted to vote. And we would go out into Lowndes County. We would leave Selma and drive out to the outlying areas and talk to the farmers. And I was only there for a couple of weeks, but it felt like a couple of years. It was when we arrived in Selma, the sheriff was there meeting the bus. We were told beforehand, don't even have a sharpened pencil because it would be viewed as a lethal weapon and we would be arrested on our arrival. So we were quite concerned when we arrived there that something could happen to us. But we felt that it was absolutely necessary for us to take that risk. So we did. And I almost got killed. We were going from Selma out to one of the towns in Lowndes County where we were run off the road, and I was in the back of a pickup truck that the state troopers chased us. They ran us off the road. The truck slid along and flipped over, and I'm in the back of the pickup truck in a sleeping bag, and we slid down the embankment down into a swamp area. So I'm in the water. There's breathing space of the cab of the truck, and the troopers came down and arrested the driver of the truck, took him away. But I'll tell you, when I got back to Howard, I was never so happy as I was that day. So a lot of adventures. Instead of just reading about Walter Mitty, I think I was starting to live Walter Mitty's life. I had signed up and joined the ROTC to earn money because during my college years, I was working and sending money home to my family. So, joining ROTC, you get a stipend, and that was part of the money that helped me to help support my family. Vietnam was winding down, but it was still pretty hot at that time, and so I wasn't. I was a second lieutenant, and I wasn't ready to go to Vietnam right then. I figured I'll go if I'm required, but if I wasn't required, and I went to grad school, then maybe I wouldn't be during the hot time. Perhaps things would settle down a little bit before I got into the military. So I applied at various schools, including Yale Law School. So Yale sort of changed their position on a lot of the applications, and several of us were admitted. There were 12 of us that were admitted. 12. I got an admission right after Martin Luther King's assassination in April. I think it was April 6th, somewhere around there. So the 12 of us were admitted. So I went to Yale Law School. The 12 of us were known as the Dirty Dozen by the other students who felt that we should not be there. And so the 12 of us would sit at a separate lunch table. We had this white guy comes over to our table, sits down, pretty much acts like he was one of us, walked in like he's one of the good old boys, Bill Clinton. He was a very self-assured, affable kind of chap who just sat down and acted like he was one of us. When Bill Clinton came in and became one of us and acted like he belonged there, and as far as we were concerned, he did. So then Lanny Davis, who's Michael Cohen's attorney, and was Bill Clinton's wingman in a way. So he comes over, and so a couple of others would come after Clinton broke the ice. There were some interesting people at that class. Ben Stein was a year ahead of us. His father was chief of staff for Nixon. He's the guy who's noted in the Ferris Bueller movie where he says, Bueller, that's Ben Stein. And Ben Stein on that movie is the same Ben Stein as he exists. He was an old guy even when he was in law school.
Did you have the opportunity to come to Bucks County while you were in law school?
I took a semester off on a workshop dealing with an issue that was pending at the time regarding zoning. So there was a case from Mount Laurel, New Jersey, that was possibly headed towards the Supreme Court. And there was a case here in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County. This is something that could be revolutionary. And I was interested in it, so I came to Bucks County because Bucks County was going to, one of the cases was out of Bucks County that was going to be considered. So I came here at that time, and somehow I got connected with Judge Ludwig. And I ended up being invited because I was working as a volunteer at the Legal Aid Society, and Judge Ludwig said, you can just stay here, right down here on State Street. I said, boy, that's Sure. So he was going off to Iceland for several weeks, and I did the house sitting and took care of the dog. I think the dog's name was Nicholas. Walking up and down near the Font Hill. So I'm walking the dog down there, and and I'm walking past all of these folks that live along Court Street, and I'm sure that it looked a little strange having this guy walking a poodle, this black kid walking a poodle down Court Street.
What was Doylestown like then?
To me, it had a kind of not exactly Mayberry, like from Andy Griffith, but it seems like it was kind of insular. I mean, it was the people seemed to be progressive, friendly, uh, open, so different from my upbringing in McKeesport. Colonial buildings, Font Hill, the Moravian Tower Works, all these things that are colonial and historic, so different. But I found Doylestown to be a very interesting place, but it was almost like a museum, a citywide museum, and the people were characters from some New England town where people had shutters on their windows and Crocs on their feet and poodles, and it just seemed like almost make believe. But it turns out that they were decent people. They were nice people. To pay the bills, I was able to get a job at the Bucks County Public Defender's Office, so I was actually working in both at the same time. I didn't have a desk, so we're up there on whichever floor of the old courthouse, and we had a little box with a little plank. It was really interesting because we shared offices, so there would be like, I don't know, two of us in an office or three, and there was one desk, and you would have to kind of share that. Camaraderie was just incredible. I mean, the feeling of being in a foxhole with people that had the same belief system that you had, that you wanted to go out and do the best that you could do, knowing that as a public defender, defending criminals, that didn't endear you to anyone. But it was work that had to be done, and I was glad to do it. I became a law clerk for Judge Ludwig. I clerked for Harriet Mims, the first female judge in Bucks County. Those two, and the public defender is, and of course being a judge later on, is the positions that I've held here in the courthouse.
And at that time, did you ever think you would become a judge?
No, and frankly, I had no interest in being a judge. My interest in becoming a judge came as a result of a case that I had here in Bucks County. I was representing a woman, an older woman, in a slip and fall case, and I was not treated too well by one of the judges, whose name I won't mention, but I felt I did something to antagonize this judge. I know that I came into the county kind of full of a lot of energy and assertiveness that came, I didn't see myself as being an aggressive person. But somehow I think that all of the things that were happening to me and the changes that were taking place in my life may have caught, and being a Yale Law grad, I think I probably saw myself as having greater influence than I really had. And I might have offended someone, and if I did, I belatedly apologize to any of them. But this person that I was representing, I thought had a good case, and she needed the money. We lost that case, and I think that I caused her to lose that case because of who I was and the way I handled myself. It literally broke my heart, and I just couldn't get past it. And as a result, our firm, at my insistence, set up a golf outing to raise money to put in that lady's pocket the money that I felt I took out of her pocket by the way I was handling her case. So we had an outing, and we raised a fair amount of money for this woman. I said at that point, you know what, I think maybe I could do more good being on the bench. I ran and lost the first time, ran and lost the second time, and I think it was the third time that I ran that I won. Now, I was a Democrat, and as judges, you're running on both tickets, but I was identified as a Democrat. I was the chair of the Democratic Party's Finance Committee, so I did a lot of the fundraising and stuff like that. I didn't feel I got the kind of the level of support that I thought I had earned by all the work that I had done. So on my third try, the then chairman of the Republican Party, Harry Fox, whom I fought with all the time. I became solicitor of Bristol Township, having the two sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, fighting each other in that town, and me being solicitor for the Democratic Board of Commissioners. I had to take the lead in the fight against Harry Fox, which I carried out my duties, and Harry Fox, to his credit, never held it against me personally. He knew that I was only doing what I had to do as the representative of the other team. You don't just walk in and get something. You got to start at the bottom and work your way up. And when the time comes, if the opportunity presents itself, then we will support you. And that's what happened. And coming in this county as a black from out of nowhere and working my way up, and I was accepted lock, stock, and barrel by the Republican Party, which kind of shocked me. Having that experience of growing up the way that I grew up, I know what it feels like to walk into a situation and feel that you have lost before you even open your mouth because of what you look like or any other external that really should never find its way into a courtroom. And the thing is, it may be that there is no bias. It may very well be that there is no adverse influence. But justice is as much a matter of perception as it is reality. Some people say that possession is 9/10 of the law. And I start saying, you know what? It's perception that's 9/10 of the law. Because if you feel that you've been treated fairly, you leave this courtroom feeling like at least you had your day in court. You lost because you deserved to lose. You didn't lose because of your color. And so I've had minorities come in expecting that they're going to get extraordinary treatment, positive treatment. But those people left understanding that what they got was fair treatment. And I think that everyone that has come in front of me understands it and accepts it. And I think that in so doing, justice has been served.
You talked about being welcomed into the community, Bucks County and Doylestown in particular, but that wasn't something that happened naturally. Could you tell us your experience with buying your first home?
When I came back to Bucks County to live, and I went looking for a house and stopped at some of the real estate offices in town. I walked into this one office and I must have sat there for half an hour and nobody would even, there were desks and people busy doing it, whatever. No one would even serve me. So I got up and left. I had that happen a couple of times. So I found this one realtor that had this little tiny office down from the Doylestown Inn. It was Dorothy McVie Baxter. She had this little odd-shaped building that's on a corner down there, and it didn't even look like a real office. But I walked in there. I told her I was looking for a house here in Doylestown. She said, "Well, we have this little house on Swamp Road. The price is X. You get the thousands and then $9.99 or something like that." And she showed me it, and I said, "Okay, I'll take it." Right sitting there, I said, "Okay, I'll take it." I didn't even see it. She showed me a photograph, and I said, "Fine." We took about 3 months before the closing, and I did not even go to it. I mean, I truly wasn't interested in the house. I just wanted a place to stay. But there was I think this was 72. There was some big hurricane. The house, we opened the doors, and just a horde of mosquitoes come pouring out of this house. And we go in, and there was about 2 feet of water in the basement. Apparently, there was a sump pump, and the electricity went out, and the house was vacant for the whole 3-4 months. We walked into this house, and it was quite a mess, and stayed there for not maybe a year and a half, something like that. Fixed it up. It was right down from the Moravian Towel Works on Swamp Road. Fixed the house up really nicely. It was kind of a little bit run down, and all of the water in there warped the hardwood floors, and it was really something. But we fixed it up nicely, and then decided we would move to Solebury. Our moving into Solebury ended up in a newspaper article in the Intelligencer. Black lawyer finds home in Solebury. I said, "Oh my Lord!" We got that house. Everything was fine. We had not sold the first house. We had it rented out. Went back to the tenants were really bad. They didn't pay the rent. They didn't do anything. They cut a tree down in the backyard and used the wood for the fireplace, and it was just a mess. So we come back and we start fixing up the house, and we're doing the work ourselves. So the newspaper boy comes by and says, "Oh, you guys moving in here?" I said, No, we're just working on this. We're fixing it up so that we can sell it." She said, "Oh, that's just too bad." He says, "There was a black couple that was living here, and we were all we weren't sure that these people are people that we would want in our neighborhood. And my father said this, and I hope that, they don't bring our property values down. And he was telling me the whole story about what the neighbors were saying about us, but no one had, we were rarely there. We were both working. We would work and we would come back, and, we had no kids, or, we had no involvement with any of these people. But there was, all these people had these stories about us. And then when we fixed up our house, the neighbors fixed up their houses so the neighborhood looked better. So here we come back to fix up what these tenants had. They kept snakes in there. They had a big python in the house. They had a python that they would take this python outside. It was incredible. When the neighbors saw this black couple coming back, they said, "Oh boy," they thought that a black couple was moving in. Thank God. Perception. Perception is so powerful that it just causes people to reach conclusions that are completely and utterly unsupported by anything. So after we moved to Soulbury, which we considered just to be a stopping point, we bought, my wife and I bought this large tract of land in Rushland, near the feed mill in Rushland, off of Swamp Road. And we all got together with our friends from Pebble Hill Church, and we took this 35 acres and we built our own community. We built the houses. We did all of the carpentry work, all of the drywall, roofing, we had contractors and we were the labor, so we did all the labor work. We built about 7 houses of it, and we built our own neighborhood. And at that time, by then we had 2 kids, and we wanted to have a neighborhood where they wouldn't have to worry about not being accepted.
Is that community still there?
Still there and thriving. My next door neighbor became my secretary here at this courthouse. So everything just goes in a circle. It's amazing. And so the community is still there. It's called the Mega Family. And we all got together, and, it was quite a success story. In that way, in a real estate sense, it was a success story.
Now, you had another success story in Bristol Township.
Yes, which in part led to a divorce, actually.
Okay.
I was the solicitor for the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority here in Doylestown. And I gained knowledge about tax-free finance and a lot of the development activities. And I wanted to replicate what was being done on the county level, on the township level. So we set up a Bristol Township Industrial Development Authority and a Bristol Township Development Corporation. And there was a large tract of land there in Bristol, right next to the Venice Ashby public housing project. And there was barracks type housing, not very pleasant housing. But that was going to be cleared, and Venice Ashby was going to be built, and that would be more of a townhouse style of housing. And I felt that if those people who were going to move out of Kingswood Park to this new housing, Venice Ashby, if they had a good and available employment base, that they, rather than just being tenants paying rent, that a portion of the rent could go towards them purchasing these units.
And what happened with that development project?
It's completed. It's doing great. I built a factory in that development, which I had for well over 30 years. Just recently sold it this past year. Now this was from in the 80s, and there is one of the streets in that development bears my name. So there's Clyde Waite Drive down in Bristol Township.
That's neat.
So a lot of just fascinating things have happened over the years that have just been. If anyone had told me that things would work out the way that they did, I would have said they were crazy. But it just tells you if you have enough belief in yourself, and you have opportunities they're everywhere. There are many things that you can do. You can do far more than you think you can do if you have enough faith, and if you have enough energy and enough commitment. It can take you a long, long way. Well, I have two sons. I'm married to a good old friend from college days that we reconnected 40 years later. So we've been married for 10 years now. My two sons, one is a scriptwriter for the Family Guy show in Hollywood, who incidentally just won this year a Screenwriters Guild Award. First son is a computer person, graduated from Harvard. He was an interesting person who is sort of a real student athlete. His first activity being on the chess team. Became a state wrestling champion from Council Rock. The football team, cross country, track team, and the swim team admitted at all of the service academies, Air Force, Navy, Army, went to Harvard, became on the crew, and is in New York and Manhattan now as a computer person with one of the Wall Street firms. So I could not be prouder of my two granddaughters and my two sons.
What do you think about the opportunities that your family is now afforded that you yourself growing up didn't have?
Well, it just shows you how lack of opportunity is not only bad for the individual, but it's bad for the community. Because these are people, I know that I would never have had the chance that I got, just serendipity, things worked out for me. But in one generation, we have two young men who are stellar, who have made a place for themselves, and the generation behind them are already admitted to college. The one is only 4 years old right now, and her future is pretty much assured. And my family back in McKeesport, we have set up a family learning center. It's in the name of my mother, Anna Middleton Waite Learning Center, that teaches elderly people how to use computers, smartphones, Word, and all these different programs. And that learning center has been there now for about 8 years.
That wasn't the only nice thing that you did for your mother, you and your siblings, is it? Did you purchase a home for her together?
Oh yes. Well, myself, my sister, others, we're not poor anymore. We're just poverty stricken. That's all. So we bought her a nice house, and I learned that the person who was appointed DA here lives on the same street. She's from McKeesport, as I am. She lives on the same street as the street where we bought the house, the new house for my mother. And I found out about that when I was interviewing for her appointment as DA. She went around to all the judges to be interviewed by them, and we were talking, and then I found out that she was from McKeesport. I said, "Oh, boy, I'm from McKeesport," and we bought a house for my mother in McKeesport. And I said, "Well, what street were you?" She says, and she gave the street, and it was only a couple of blocks away from the house that all of the kids got together and bought a house for my mother. It's remarkable. And as I said, it's to the benefit of the community to just give equal treatment. You don't give a quality to a person. You give them the opportunity to show that they have certain qualities that are beneficial both to themselves and their community. There's just too many people who are never given a chance. They're never given an opportunity. We have immigrants who could do all kinds of things that are positive for the community, and as a group, they are rejected out of hand without ever having known any of them, without giving them any opportunity to show what they can do for this country. This country would never be as great as it presently is without the contributions that are made by people who came from the outside and people who come from different places that come to this country and help to make it the great place, the melting pot that it is. And I'm sorry to see some of that Irish stew is coming, the ingredients are coming apart. They're separating out. And that is not to the benefit of anyone. Not the ones that are being rejected, not the ones who are doing the rejecting.
Judge, you've been an active participant in the greater Doylestown community for over 50 years. On behalf of the Doylestown Historical Society, founded by our mutual friend and mentor, Judge Ed Ludwig, I'd like to thank you for sitting for this interview, Your Honor, and for all of the interesting information you've given us.
Well, I appreciate being invited, and I'm happy to do whatever I can at any time. If you ask me, I will be there to answer.